in the course of a lifetime, people are going to go through challenges. People are going to go through ups and downs. And at the moment, as you know, everybody is going through a huge challenge. In fact, it's something which I don't think the world has ever, not in our time, has ever come across. And so within the challenge, you must have a lot of businesses who come to you with this word. The flavor of the month is pivot.
Mhm.
A lot of businesses are trying to pivot at the moment. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts around what does it mean at the moment to pivot as a business? And I suppose what's the difference between a pivot and repositioning your business? I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, so these two terms, Shil, I mean, pivoting and repositioning, it seems to have been used interchangeably in the recent times, especially during COVID period. And there's always, a term that becomes flavor of the season, sort of, and pivot has become a flavor of the season. And I don't think people go deep into, sort of differentiating that what does exactly the pivot means, or when I talk about I'm pivoting sort of in my business, or I'm using the pivot, does that really mean or translate into the actions what you are taking? Maybe not necessarily all the time, because they're not going into the literal sense of the word pivot. So pivot has been used in a lot of management terminologies for few decades, and a lot of entrepreneurs, and in the startup phase, the people have used the term the pivot. And it's probably more prevalent in the early phases of the lives of a company, which is could be in a startup phase, or could be in the early stages of the growth. And it primarily means a shift in your strategy, or fundamental shift in your strategy. And you do that through the continuous research process, or market research process, or the feedback from your clients and customers. And that could mean that you need to change, either you're already sort of trying to establish what your product should look like, or how that would penetrate into the market. And you might have to pivot in those early phases to come to, or to come to an actual product which I think is an acceptable product to your marketplace. And I mean, there's few examples with a lot of big successful companies we know of. They started in a total different environment with a product or a service. I mean, Starbucks was selling espresso machines. Twitter started with the podcasts. And what they are today are a totally different company with a different product and a service. So all along their journey, they have pivoted, from one phase to the other, from one product to the other, by either segmenting their markets, or sort of after doing the appropriate market research with their customers, what they need. Sometimes, converting their product into a service, because when they release a product, the people, probably there's a service element associated with it. And sometimes the customers end up accepting the service as a better use for themselves compared to the product itself. And that has happened with a lot of big companies, where their the service or the knowledge associated with the support system around the use of the product has actually taken over as a more prominent part of their solution. So but I mean, in the current COVID times, I suppose there is both a mixture of a pivot and a repositioning happening. So the repositioning on the other side is basically is kind of shift in how you position yourself as a brand in the market. So you kind of repositioning your sort of place, or how you as a brand are accepted in the market. So you still do go through the research process and see where you fit now in the current market circumstances. And that normally happens with, and there's a lot involved with the repositioning as well, because you have to change the whole brand strategy, your marketing strategy. And that could happen suddenly in environments like now we have under the COVID, because it could be sudden, it could be extreme, and it needs a total sort of shift in how you are positioned as a brand in the market, and that could change your marketing process altogether.
Interesting you mentioned that because look, I for one, I depend on being in front of an audience, as you know. My line of the work involves speaker coaching and keynote speaking and workshops, and all of it is delivered in person. And so I personally have stayed away from this word pivot. I
Mhm.
have right from the beginning because I feel the word to use is I've adjusted, I've repositioned in the sense that I'm still presenting. However, I've identified an opportunity to now take my services and present online.
Yes.
I feel there is it's about the way you position your brand and your skill set while still remaining in your field. I'm seeing a lot of people at the moment, entrepreneurs, startups, consultants, coaches, there's business owners, the list goes on. I've seen a lot of people who are now dipping their toes into different areas. And I'll just give an example. There are people out there who run gyms. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, these gym owners are now experts at presenting on Zoom. So that's quite a different shift in your marketing strategy. What
Yes.
do you think about, is it right for businesses to do that, or is that a risky strategy?
I think it is being flexible in any environment and readjusting your business to not only to survive but to create new opportunities. And it's all about whether you are in a pivot environment or whether you're in a repositioning sort of a condition. It's all about tapping on new and alternate opportunities based on the circumstances. So when you're in a pivot environment, or when you say you're pivoting, you basically you kind of refining your product, or you moving from one product phase to another product phase. It could totally change. You might not have found the feed for your business, and it's true that even in the current environment, the pivot is happening with a lot of businesses. You take an example of some of the hospitality, or let's say catering businesses, who okay, well, a restaurant or anyone in the hospitality who are the sort of more direct customer serving, they could go from dining to takeaways. But a catering business has, basically fundamentally, the whole concept has to change, because they can't move in a similar way from a restaurant, from a dining to from a takeaway. So they could totally pivot their business because they've got the infrastructure of providing a catering service. Now they might have to cater to a different product need, might not be in the food, but it could be a different product need, and they could pivot altogether from one product to the other. Whereas the example you've given yourself, that you're providing a same service and an expertise, but you change your mode and position in the market, which is you come straight away. So like a gym, like a fitness trainer or a professional coach, who delivering a same sort of an expertise, but they've changed the mode of delivery and how they are placing themselves in the market, to offer their service. Some fitness trainers who are offering the same kind of training, but more on a Zoom, but they can still give the same program to their clients and run that program on a Zoom. It depends how they adapt to it. So uh, but it's a matter of tapping onto the right opportunities by either adopting a different sort of a mode or a platform, or a total change in your product and using your existing business infrastructure to keep delivering a product or a service.
Understood.